I use the Visual Explorer art decks to really uncover what is beneath the surface.
Okay.
And it's amazing when you use art as a mediator because we all perceive art in a very different way. Me and you could
Yeah.
look at the same picture, you will see something completely different.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly of the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. At Abbey Research, we believe deeply in the idea that empathy is a posture that we should have as we move through the world. And the way to build it is through curiosity. And the way to enact curiosity is through asking questions and listening. And that's what this series is in service to. It's called Welcome to My World. And I get to chat to fascinating folks from all over the show who are different than me, which honestly is everybody, about something in their lives that if we knew it, our human experience would be richer. Because folks, let's face it, none of us know how to human. It didn't come with an instruction manual. We are all figuring it out as we go along. And we might as well do it together and learn from each other. It's healthier and easier in the long run. Today is no exception to that fascinating guest who we have a lot to learn from. I am joined today by Sonja Pemberton, who is a fellow member of the Big Talk a certification speaker program and someone who I am very honored to know. She's used lived experience and evidence-based approaches from organizational development and neuroscience. We all know how I don't have anything to do with hard sciences, so I'm excited to bring that element into this. She sets the tone for thought-provoking and engaging journeys for audiences using all of that. You guys will be no different today. By shifting the approach of the inclusion and belonging conversation to the concept of othering, participants can view their experience and actions through a new lens. This perspective provides increased opportunities to understand how, when, why we other. I'm so excited about this. This was core to my PhD, so I can't wait to talk about it. With a career spanning more than 25 years, Sonja's been privileged to lead, mentor, and coach across multiple industries and generations. She's worked with startups to Fortune 100s, providing a wealth of knowledge and experience. Her ability to create safe containers for participants, to experience transformative mind shifts have been, can you tell I can't say those words? Let's try this again. Her ability to create safe containers for participants to experience transformative mindset shifts, there we go, has been the cornerstone of her success. And I cannot wait to get into this with her. Sonja, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Kristen, for having me. Delighted to have this time to talk about the work.
Oh my gosh, I love talking about centering and othering. It's actually what I unpacked a lot in my first TEDx. So I want to get right into that. What brought you to the work of focusing on othering?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it goes back to when I was a child.
Okay.
I grew up with the lens of the other.
Okay.
I realized at the age of 8 that I was an other. I talked about in my big talk, I shared the experience, and I was around 8 years old, and I kept hearing these two words, and the words were illegitimate and also bastard. And I was a curious child. I read very early. I went into kindergarten reading. And so I was constantly reading books and in the dictionary. Back at that time, we had an actual dictionary. Google had not been invented yet. I looked up the word illegitimate and looked up the word bastard and realized that it described me. So from the time I was 8 years old, I viewed the world through a completely different lens. And I think it has been something that has helped me evolve as a human, and provided me with a lens to see others in a very different way, and not as the other, because I've always been the other. So it expanded my view of the world and my view of other humans and of humanity.
There's so much in that.
Yeah.
So much in that. It boggles my mind. I'll just be completely honest. It boggles my mind that like illegitimate and bastard are still things people give anything about past like 1694. So I heard that in your big talk and I was like arrested by it. Like, oh my God, why would they care? But like they obviously did. And which it again, like of all the wise things you said, my brain just kept tumbling around. Like, what does it matter? But I love that you've taken this experience and can empathetically then engage with so many others who are othered in so many specific ways, because we're all intersections of othering and centering.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're all that. So this focus on othering, did it carry you through your whole career? Is this a newer focus, or has that always been your jive?
It's always been my jive. It's not always been my major focus in my work.
Okay.
A lot of my work was always in helping others to see their highest potential and how to
Okay.
achieve that highest potential. But then as we've become a more diverse society and a more diverse global society, it began to creep up again as we also have become very divisive. And so what I saw was an opportunity for us to see each other as the other. Therefore, there is no other.
Okay.
Okay. Because we're all the other
Right.
in some way. And for me, it was about being able to bring together individuals who would have a shared experience
Right.
based on a lived experience that would then allow each of us to understand on a human level, on a somatic level, what it feels like to have been othered, no matter how it was, no matter what the
Yeah.
othering, how the othering showed up. And then that having that shared experience of our lived experience, and then being able to have empathy, which I think is missing
So
for the experiences of others.
So is this a workshop situation, or do you do it in more organic situations? Like, can you give me the mechanics of this? This fascinates me.
Yeah, it's a workshop,
Okay.
and it allows it's a lot more difficult to do virtually,
I
but
can,
it still can be
oh my
done.
gosh.
You just have to change the way you're presenting things and the dynamics of how they're happening. I use a lot of creative techniques in person. I use art a lot also. And so it's something where we come together in a group where we sort of level the field a little.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of research around threat, and in neuroscience, there's a lot of research around threat. We've been doing diversity and inclusion. Well, we've been doing diversity since about 1964, Title VII, I believe it was, where we
Yeah.
began with the civil rights. That was the beginning of it. It's had many iterations over the years. But look where we are, right? So I think if we're able to level the playing field, so to speak, where we're able to see each other and the experiences of being othered in many different categories. It's not a race and ethnicity thing, it's religion, it's socioeconomic status, it's gender identification, orientation, it's a whole melding of lots of different things. When we can see that it has happened to us and what it feels like, then we're able to then have that ability to come to shared understanding. And then my main goal is to have the empathy. So for me, once we've had this workshop, and we understand our biases. It's very easy for us to see bias in others, but we're
Right.
not necessarily very good at seeing biases in ourselves.
Not particularly. Yeah.
We're then able to begin to work with those threats, that the threat that we feel. We're social beings, so we go a lot into the social neuroscience of what are the 5 areas that we feel most threatened in, and it's a model that's called SCARF that I utilize in the work as well. So that's sort of how we get around beginning to have this shared understanding of what othering is and how it impacts us.
I love that. I mean, our work is so parallel, like where we do so much of the same stuff. And I love the different techniques that we use to get there, which is so important because anybody who tries to get territorial over this kind of conversation doesn't belong in this conversation. Like, we need as many people facilitating reflections on othering as humanly possible, because everybody speaks to different people differently. And one of the things I never use is art. So I want to come back to that, because I know from talking to you in offline conversations that art is a big part of you and your life and your work. So I guess, yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
So I've always been very creative. From the time I can remember, I've always loved drawing, all types of art. As I grew older, I started doing juried shows and putting my work into the exhibits, juried exhibits specifically. And so it's always been a part of me. I'm trying to think back when this might have been. I think it was actually when I was working on my master's, I discovered a visual explorer. And it is a deck of, I don't know, over 200 different images. And it's really used in dialogue. A lot of my work is all about dialogue, introspection, reflection, that type of thing. And so I use the Visual Explorer art decks to really uncover what is beneath the surface.
Okay.
And it's amazing when you use art as a mediator, because we all perceive art in a very different way. Me and you could look at the same picture, you will see something completely different.
Yeah.
And then having that in a group setting and having a conversation about, here's this section of a tree trunk, and there's these lines going around. I can see one thing, you'll look at it and see something else. When we take that and then say, what is the feeling that you were having when you felt othered or when you were othering? And select a photograph that shows that depicts that feeling. And then you're beginning to tell the story of why you selected that picture. Other people are then seeing something different, and everyone's having the opportunity to really get deeper. Things begin to come that don't normally come if we're just having a conversation without that mediated piece in the middle. So big part of my master's was in mediated dialogue using art as the mediator. And I continue that work and will continue it with my doctoral program.
Yes, fellow doctor. I love this so much because I'm an incredibly visual person that has been intimidated by the creation of visual art my entire life. So I always thought it wasn't for me, and like wouldn't engage with it for a whole lot of reasons. And then because the universe works like this, my business partner has an art history background and did her PhD in identity formation around handicrafts and art among political prisoners in Northern Ireland. And so one of the things that Erin has taught me so much is this neutral third party place that we can project things. But I have that too, as I've realized in talking to her and now talking to you. I've just always used theater or movies for it. And so that's a lot of our work, is using, talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier as ways to talk about empathy. But I think what's important here is that we're both using a neutral third party, and that people can engage with imagination of othering quicker than they can engage with their actual othering. And I think some of it, please correct me if I'm wrong or you disagree, but I think some of this is, it almost eliminates a personal sense of either of responsibility temporarily, which then suspends any feelings of shame.
Right. So that reminds me of Amy Edmondson's work over at Harvard.
Yes. Yeah.
Physical safety. Yep. I think she's coined that term. And that's what we're really trying to create. We're trying to create a space of physical safety where people don't feel like they're going to be punished for speaking up or for having an opinion, because we can always change our mind, right?
Oh my gosh. Let's pause right there.
Okay.
This is like one of the things that I want tattooed across the sky. We need to normalize changing our minds.
Yeah.
In your work, have you found like the kind of why humans believe that changing your mind is a bad thing? We're looking for answers right now, because we don't quite understand in society when we decided, we think it's something to do with how the political narrative has evolved. and like the flip-flopping that people accused. I think that was the 2004 election, right? With John Kerry, with all the flip-flopping and that phrase. But like, why aren't we okay with changing our minds anymore?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it has a lot to do again with this SCARF model that I use a lot in my work, and I think a lot of it has to do with in-group, out-group.
Oh gosh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, we didn't add that yet. Perfect.
Yeah. So how much do you want to distance yourself from that group that you feel that you belong to by going against and changing your mind? What is the social implications around it? So I think that's a deep piece. You've got to be a really strong individual to distance yourself from what you feel is a part of your social identity, right? So the social identity work, I think, is really, really a big thing. I don't know if are you familiar with Jay Bavel out of NYU? They have
I am, but I know my viewers aren't because I haven't brought it up to them yet. So can you unpack that work for us?
Well, he does a lot of work on social identity. He's also, we are both associated with the Neuro Leadership Institute in New York. Nice. And he has a new book coming out. I believe it's going to, I want to say August or September. I believe it's September, early September. It's called The Power of Us.
Amazing. So you guys are watching this, it's October. Sonja and I chatted in July. So I will make sure that the link is in the show notes to the book that you just mentioned. Continue, please.
Yeah. So the social identity piece, it goes back to the in-group, out-group for me. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so the question that you asked is why people have such a hard time changing their minds. I think in a moment of introspection and reflection, we know on a visceral level that we've had a mindset shift, but can we continue to be that person and still be in that group that we know believes something completely different?
So how much of our social ties are we willing to sever to be this like newer or fuller version of ourselves? Mm-hmm. That question is like best done in a therapeutic environment for most people. Okay, I see that. I didn't do the social ties piece. I'm assuming there's a neuroscience connectivity with this too, that how our brains are hardwired almost to crave connectivity, that the risk of violating the connectivity is not, you have to weigh that against this new piece of data.
Yeah. So if we look at a continuum of say high threat being on the left side and high reward being on the right side.
Right.
We go back and forth depending on how we feel as according to the SCARF model that David Rock had introduced many years ago. It stands for status, for certainty, for autonomy, for relatedness, and for fairness. And so we are wanting to know where we are at any given time in a social setting.
Okay.
As far as what is our status? How will it change our status? How is it going to change our certainty about whatever's going to happen as a result? If we're talking about this literally coming out and having a different opinion of that we've changed our mind, how's that going to affect us with the group? And then do I really have the autonomy to have a change of mind, and still how's that going to affect being in a threat or a reward state with this group? And then will I still belong, or will I then be othered as it relates to relatedness, R of the SCARF model? And then on the F piece of the SCARF model, will I be afforded the same opportunities in group with this change of mind? So there's we can take that model and we can apply it to many different things, but it is basically a social model because we're social beings.
My mind is exploding. And here's this is one of the reasons I love this series and one of the reasons I love this work. Again, you and I are doing almost the exact same work. We are trained in completely different disciplines. We are trained in completely different mindsets around this. And so I'm coming with a lot more of the socio-historical context aspects. What have we learned from society around us that we can unlearn? And I'm not necessarily talking about changing your mind, but more just taking in new data about the world itself and kind of what does that do. But I am 100% going to be looking at this SCARF model, which I have not encountered before. So thank you for this to make my work richer. And I absolutely adore that we have to continue to learn. So point the two. Point the third, this whole idea of the social connectivity, I think is really important to focus on as we have empathy for each other on the journey. Like there are really low stakes things that I've changed my mind on in the last couple of years. An example Aaron and I use all the time is that like we had a real lack of knowledge around the Asian American experience in the United States. Like that was something we thought we knew. And then when the terrorist shooting happened in 2021, we were like, oh shit, we know nothing. And so we had to, look for other sources and kind of do that. That was low emotional stakes for us because it was driven by us to do that. But I sat with a lot of people in 2020 that either the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd or the protests or the election or coronavirus, like whatever, forced them to change their mind about things that disrupted that group cohesion. And I didn't really understand the level of trauma that they were internally dealing with, because some of them, it arrested it so quickly they didn't have time to make the decision.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of families have seen that in the last 2 election cycles.
Yeah.
So this is another conversation of, do you have a minute to adjust to this new cohesion?
Yeah.
Or is it like instantaneous and then you're reeling?
Yeah.
Man, it's so complicated. I'm glad there's a lot of us doing this.
Yeah, it goes to this, I alluded to earlier about the threat levels. So if we look at threat as like 3 different levels. So threat 1 is we're alerted to the threat, but we're not really alarmed, right?
Okay.
It's sort of in our broader environment.
Got it.
Threat 2, it's in our neighborhood now, and our alarm and alert have now been triggered, right? Because it's in our neighborhood. Threat 3 is it's here. It's right here. It's on me. I'm feeling it. Everything is at high level. And now it becomes a physical manifestation.
Got it.
Because now we are like in fear mode. It's affecting our bodies. It's affecting our immune systems. And so whenever it becomes a physical manifestation, it decreases our ability, right, to function. It decreases our ability to do all of the things that we need to do specifically around decision making, around creativity, around cognition. I mean, everything just sort of, we're now, when I gave you the continuum, we are way over to the left in the threat response, right? The sweet spot is just to the right of the middle.
Okay.
We want to be
like a heightened awareness
over here in la la land.
Right.
If this is the middle and threats over here and rewards over here, we kind of want to be right here because we want to be just enough over the happy line, but not so far back over the threat line. But we want to be in this place where we're aware of what's happening, right? So what we want to constantly do, and this is what my real work will be on my doctoral work, is how do we stay at this level 1? How do we have people come to a conversation around differences,
right?
Biases, assumptions, unconscious or conscious, and not start the conversation with a time of being completely full of anxiety and on that threat place.
Got it.
How do we level that? That's when we're able to level that and reduce that threat level down, then we're able to literally have conversations, the cognition, the creativity, the decision, all of that stuff then is in a space where we can perform in a better way. And our minds are not in that level 3 place where we were over many times over the last I don't know, specifically over the last year and a half.
Yeah, because I mean, we have to continually have conversations about how COVID took all of us. If we were at 3, it doesn't matter. COVID added a 5. And like, what does that mean? What does that look like? I am so excited for your doctoral work and that I can learn alongside as you are doing this research. I am like buzzing with the ability to learn from you. I'm so excited. Sonja, almost doctor, but not yet, but someday. Thank you so much for this conversation. This was so enlightening.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoyed it.
Gosh, pals, if you learned as much as I did and you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. The YouTube algorithm really appreciates that. If you like the kind of vibe and maybe you can tolerate me, please hit subscribe on the channel. We have a lot of fun and wide-ranging and wise conversations all around here. Hit the bell so you don't miss a single one of them. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly. My guest is Sonja Pemberton, who will someday be doctor. So keep your eyes out for her brilliance as we go. All the ways to get a hold of her are underneath in the show notes. This has been Welcome to My World, and we'll see you next time. Bye.